So, a lot of federal agencies are reporting being overwhelmed and understaffed. And this is becoming a common combination this year, probably into next year. Some agencies, they can do something about it now. They can start hiring now. Others, they're going to have to wait a while longer. So let's take a look at some of the agencies that are in serious pain and they should be hiring next year. First, we have the Department of Interior. You have offices in there that are 22% understaffed. We're talking about firefighters, maintenance workers. These positions, they typically start at about $55,000 a year. The DRP and the hiring freeze dramatically impacted this agency to a point where they're now in serious pain. Now, when you're looking at workers like firefighter, police officer, correction worker, they all fall under that category of public safety, meaning that they're exempted from the hiring freeze. They're exempted from having that convoluted process where you have to apply to get a waiver and all the rest of it. So that's a good thing. Now, if you were to ask me right now, do you want to be a corrections officer? I would say no, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. There's still a demand for it. And you have two agencies largely that have those opportunities. You have the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Justice, and you have the Department of Interior. Which one would you want to be a corrections officer in? I would pick, if I were forced to, I would pick DOI, Department of Interior, because it's less violent. The offenders there are usually there for a shorter period of time, and officers tend to have more autonomy when working in the Department of Interior. Bureau of Prisons is a mess. It's more dangerous. There's more gang violence over there. So looking at the salaries is pretty much the same if you're looking at it, 50, 55, maybe 60,000 a year. But I think if you did have a desire to be a corrections officer, DOI is the clear choice. The only problem with it is there's limited promotional opportunities because it's not as big as BOP. Okay, the next one we have is Department of Energy. They are reporting 25% vacancy. This agency was missing 1,200 workers before 2025. So while we're still in 2024, there was a shortage here. And some of these jobs, they're in remote locations. Idaho, New Mexico. They got a job here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Have you been there? Would you want to work in Albuquerque? Go ahead and Google Albuquerque. See what it looks like. Not the hot air balloon picture, not the mountain picture. Google the city of Albuquerque. Nobody wants to live there. There's no grass. There's high crime. It looks like it was just put in the middle of nowhere. It's a very undesirable place, I would say. Now, if you live in Albuquerque, I'm sure it's probably because of friends and family. It's not because of the location is amazing. So you have that issue as well. What they really need in the Department of Energy right now, what they really need is engineers. They need electrical engineers. Problem is, private sector pays a lot better. There was a new executive order that came out recently that targeted the Department of Energy. That is, what it's going to end up doing is there's going to be a partnership with a lot of new contracting companies. So it's going to create jobs, just not federal worker jobs, but they still need people in this agency. The next one is ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearm, and Explosives. This is an agency within the Department of Justice. They're at 15% vacancy. These jobs, clearly, they're under the public safety category. So it shouldn't be an issue getting people hired. It's just not enough people are applying to this job. And one of the reasons why is somewhat dangerous. You want to be a special agent. It's going to really mess with your work-life balance, with having a family. And at times it can seem incompatible with having a family in the same way being a police officer working in active duty military. It's somewhat incompatible with having a family. It makes it more challenging. Now, if you look on usajobs.gov, a special agent position, they have a job announcement that's open for the whole year. It's continuous. That means they want people to keep applying, and then they interview and vet those people as they come in. But There will be an academy requirement. It's about 15 weeks long. It's pretty intensive. There's a physical fitness test. They're going to check out how many push-ups can you do in a minute, how many sit-ups can you do in a minute, how fast can you run a 1.5 mile run. And these standards, if you go to ATF, you look at the standards, they're not as high as the Army. The old Army standard was 2 minutes push-ups, 2 minutes sit-ups, and 2 mile run. So this is less than that. The next agency is the Department of Labor. They're not hiring right now, but they need to be hiring. Look at some of the offices. The wage hour division. They're operating on a 52-year low. There's a 20% vacancy over there. And what's really surprising is when they post job announcements in the Midwest region, in the Southeast region, they're receiving only 5 to 10 applications. People are not applying for those jobs. So when people are always wondering like, hey, why is there always 100, 200 people applying for every federal government job? That's simply not true. For a Department of Labor job, it's in a more remote location, but if you apply, you're going to be one of very few that actually apply for the job. Look under MSHA, that's Mine Safety and Health Administration. They receive less than 10 applications every time they post a job for a mine inspector. OSHA, another division that's struggling to hire. So how can they start hiring? These jobs, maybe for an inspector, like a mine inspector, that could be public safety. But most of these jobs, they do not fall under one of the 3 main categories. So they're going to have to send up a letter, a justification memo up to OPM to try to get permission to hire for some of these jobs if they can show how it aligns with the Trump administration's efficiency goals. Can they show that? I mean, the waivers, it's not a slam dunk. You have to write it up. You have to wait. It's going to be a process. But they do need to hire. Now, most of these jobs, they hire for the 3 categories that I mentioned. If you do not follow the 3 categories, there's the 1 to 4 rule, meaning that you can only hire 1 individual for every 4 that leave. That is intended to dramatically shrink the agency. The problem with that in 2026 is you cannot use any of the people that accepted the DRP in 2025 because the new fiscal year started in October 2025. So the DRP for most agencies, the vast majority, there's still some that go out to January, but for the majority of them, they ended at the end of September, meaning that you cannot, as an agency, use that as justification. So that could be an issue for the Department of Labor. Overall, job announcements have increased dramatically. They've increased by 80%. If you compare what we have going on right now to the first 6 months of 2025, we have seen on average an 80% increase. That is a positive sign. The average vacancy rate with agencies, they were at about 10 to 15%. Now they're at 22% on average. Now, I'm not talking about DOD or Department of Homeland Security because a lot of people are applying to those agencies. In addition to this, we have OPM coming out publicly posting that we pushed out too many federal workers. The goal was 300,000. We did way above 300,000. So if you take it from the OPM director on what his ideology is, what is his plan, what is his strategy for federal hiring moving into 2026, if you're interested in that, then I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.